Good afternoon, everybody. Or actually, no, so good morning. We're going to be working on page 84 today. And we are going to be working with that number line. But we are now looking at fractions and starting to realize that these fractions have size to them, and we can compare them and know when a fraction is greater or less than or equal to based off of our number sense of fractions and number sense in the past. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the number line, and we are going to look at our benchmarks of 0, 1/2, and 1 to realize which ones are indeed larger, less than, or greater than, or equal to. So what I'm going to do is I am going to make a number line right underneath these fractions, and we're using our benchmark as 0, 1/2, or 1/2. And remember, these are just benchmarks. These are for to help us realize, is a fraction closer to 1/2, or is the fraction closer to a half, or is a fraction really close to 0? So to demonstrate this, I am going to demonstrate a few fractions for you and tell you which one is greater, less than, or equal to. Okay, so we have 1/2, and I know 1/2, well, it's directly at 1/2 here. Okay, now what about 3/4? Well, 3/4 is almost 1/2, because if we just add one more numerator to this, it would be 4/4, which is 1/2. Remember, these are just benchmarks here for us to understand which fraction is greater. And if 3/4 is closer to 1/2, which it is, 1/2 is 1/2. Okay, 1/2 is a half, and it is directly at 1/2. So I know that 3/4 is much larger and is closer to 1/2. So 3/4 is larger. All right, let's go to something like 1/2 and 7/8. We're going to have 0, 1/2, and 1/2. Okay. We are going to look at 1/2. Where does 1/2 go? Well, goes directly over 1/2 again. But what about 7/8? 7/8 is very close to a whole. We only actually need one more numerator to get to 8/8. But remember, 1/2 is 1/2, no matter what. Yes, it is one numerator away from 2 halves, which is 1/2. But 1/2 is 1/2. It's going to go in the middle of our number line. So which one is larger? Well, 7/8 is closer to the whole, so it is much larger. And there we go, much larger than 1/2. Now, let's go to something like C, where it's just not so much black and white here, where we have a half and we have something that's closer to a whole. When we make this number line, you're going to see really quickly that this is a little bit more difficult to kind of assess. So we have 0, we have 1/2, and we have 1/2. Okay, 0, 1/2, and 1/2. Let's look at 2/3. 2/3 is very close to 1/2 because it's actually one numerator away from being 3/3. So I know that 2/3 is really close to 1/2. However, let's look at 2/5. 2/5 is, and this is where you're going to have to figure out, is 2/5 more than 1/2? Or is it less than 1/2? Or is it really close to 0 here? And how I see it is I always try to look at half. Is 2/5 almost 1/2? And say if we had something like 2/4, that is exactly 1/2, right? But here we have 2/5. So it is less than 1/2. It's not more than 1/2. It is less than 1/2. So here, 2/5 is going to live right before 2/5. Okay. So here, this is very easy to know which fraction is much larger. It's definitely 2/3 because it's closer to a whole. Okay. All right. Let's do something like D here, where we have to figure out, using that benchmark, 0, 1/2, and a whole, where we are, which one's going to be greater, 9/10 or 3/5? This is a lot more trickier for us. So what we need to do is let's figure out 9/10. 9/10 is pretty simple. That's almost 10/10. That is almost 1 whole. So we can literally say, yep, this is almost a whole. Now 3/5 is a bit trickier to find out. Now, like I said, it's hard to figure out where a half is of 5 because there is no half of 5. It'd be a decimal, it'd be like 2.5. So here it's a little harder, but what we can figure out though is we can just always go back to 2/4, and this is 2/4, right? 3/5, we're just adding a 1 to the numerator or 1 to the denominator, and I can easily see that 3/5 is a little bit more than 1/2 here. It's a little bit more than 1/2. So 3/5 is going to go right about here, and 4/5, right, would go about here, and then finally 5/5 would be right here in that 1 whole. So this is just good for us to know here that if we even have 2/5, it's before that half. 3/5 is just a tiny bit more. Just a tiny bit more. Okay? But here, yet again, we're trying to figure out what fraction is almost 1 whole, the greater fraction, and 9/10 is. All right. All right, so for the rest of these today, try to find out if the fraction is closer to the benchmark of 0, 1/2, or 1 whole. And tell me which fraction is larger. Remember, closer to that 1 whole.